we have tried to discuss how you can create a personalized AI assistant that safely can parse private information to LLMs and gain knowledge without leaking this information inadvertently into the training data of these models. I lost my thought. Can you pick up?
Right, so essentially the idea is we all want personalized models, but we're all too scared to give it our data because we don't know what's going to be done with this data. So what we're trying to achieve is train a model that's suited to your personal needs, i.e. the personalized assistant, without actually selling any of your private information. So there are two approaches to it. They are called, very distinctly approach 1 and approach 2. So approach 1 is if we assume that there exists a foundational model which we could use already, we are kind of basing our project off the assumption that it's already good enough for certain tasks. What it really needs is it needs fine-tuning. And it's actually not very difficult given that, we have the capabilities, you could request a lot of GPUs, and there are fundamentally a lot of grants and a lot of companies which would provide you with compute. And all you need to do is you need to fine-tune it on your personal data. So the assumption here is that the model kind of does not have to be sent back at any point. So it's already good enough on main tasks. So all you're doing is you're training it on your own personal data locally. Approach number 2, in case we actually don't get access to any such model, is that we have to train it ourselves. So this is where the technical side comes in with distributed machine learning, particularly FL with differential privacy. And the reason DP is important is because the entire purpose of DP is to limit the amount of information you are embedding, or I'm using the notation here, but embedding into the model. And the difficulty here is that DP is in general like a very complex notion on its own. It's not necessarily easy for me to explain, is epsilon of 3, i.e. the privacy budget of 3, good or not good? So the challenge here is to find a good line of both the technical work and the explanatory work to accompany it, to make sure that people actually understand what are they doing. So the overall idea is that, I send a model to all of you guys, you train it locally in your data, you share the updates with a central server, but because it's trained in a differentially private manner, I actually can't really extract anything from the models that you're sharing. So then we repeat this for a few rounds, and then after a few rounds, we have the model that's been good enough and has been pre-trained on, overall collective data, which then leads us to doing approach number 1 again, but without having to assume that there exists a model which is already good enough. So in terms of what does the success look like? Well, given that this works out, the success looks like, we all have our each personal assistant model, which is capable of doing essentially anything that we want it to do. It's difficult to define what a success is here. In terms of the risks, so again, this comes back to which assumption do we satisfy? So I actually read this morning Mithril Security, for those of you who know them. They posted on their blog that they essentially went to Hugging Face, which is like a big model repository, and they've uploaded a backdoored model there. So the model itself performs identically well in 99% of all tasks, except for space. So if you start asking questions about space, it's gonna spit out some nonsense. So apparently Yuri Gagarin was the first person who actually landed on the moon in 1950. So this is something that we already see happening, and Hugging Face is a really big repository of machine learning models, and people trust it, people use it. So if we're going with the assumption that we're hoping that there is a pre-trained model, this is something we need to look out for. If we're not going with the assumption and we want to train the model ourselves, well then, it's the same principle. Now, except for now, I actually have more parties which could potentially poison the model and cause the misbehavior there. And maybe you want to do the other stuff because I'm really tired of talking.
Yeah, I can understand. So, to what this project would are we here? Yeah, engineering, monitoring. Yeah, the costs of this project is a bit difficult to estimate, but we
like money.
So we like money. So we downgraded it a bit when we saw
it used to be 2 million, and then we looked at 5K, 10K. I was like, yeah, no.
So because this is a huge undertaking, and we were thinking how many people to do the alpha testing and stuff we should have at least 1,000 to get the most variety in age, different skill sets, and so on, to try out this model. How long will it take? Well, given a year, we could have made quite a lot of advances and tried out different open source models if the first one fails. How do we prove or check that it's working? We would have to be red teaming it and check that our privacy measures are working out. So, yeah. And we need to see an improvement in the performance of the personalized tasks over the time that we training on this. And yeah. So.
In the next steps?
Yeah, and that would be sourcing then the testers that would be running the trials with this assistant, and then depending on what, yeah. So and then also deciding which open source model to train the personalized AIs on to make the base foundation for the assistant. So,
yeah. Sure. While we were doing this project, I'm here for emotional support. Just kind of two concerns came up, and one is a concrete definition of what personal data is. So that's kind of the first obstacle that I see with this project, is you would have to define, in some objective way, what everyone considers personal data, whether it's inferred from emails that are sent or text messages or things directly said. Those would all have to be considered. You'd have to define how you would handle that type of data, so your model wouldn't infer things from those. And then the other obstacle that I see is the definition of success. So when your project is finished, is it that you all have a personal model that does some arbitrary tasks, or we talked about one as in-depth as like almost acting as a power of attorney? Yeah. My user is at their end of life, here's how I will handle all of their affairs. Yeah. You could kind of get lost very easily defining when you're finished with the project.
Thank you guys. Questions, comments? Alex.
Well, I'm very excited to try out an AI assistant. I've gone through many assistants, both virtual, like humans, and also like software with humans. And so assuming you solve this privacy issue, the other main issue I've experienced as a user of many of these services is cultural biases. So for example, I tried out a virtual assistant service with a human. I hope these models are easier to train than some humans are. And the human kept, even though I'm Jewish, kept sending me reminders about Christian holidays. Like, hey, I'm your personal assistant and I'm here, and I've come up with a couple of gift ideas for your kids for Christmas. And I'm like, I'm Jewish, I have told you 3 times already, and this feels a little bit offensive that this is the 3rd time that I've been getting this messaging. So to me, I'm really excited for you to solve the privacy issue. And then in terms of cultural sensitivity and also usefulness, there's a huge opportunity. You could do so much good. There are so many, for example, I know many women who work in tech who are frustrated at the fact that they spend 10 hours a year, every year, filling out the same forms, the same information for all the schools and summer camps. If you could just these small problems actually have a huge impact on people's lives. And if you could have an AI assistant that can solve those, that would be a huge net benefit to society. So to me, I'm yes, tackle the privacy issue, and then don't forget to also tackle the usefulness and the cultural sensitivity issues, and then I'll be your top user.
I have a mic. Unless anyone else wants to go. Sorry. Yes, go for it.
I'm sorry if I missed this, but one of the things you mentioned was requiring a kind of objective definition of personal information that was agreed upon by everyone. And maybe this is because I missed something about the creation of the model or system that you want to design. But why can each user not just stipulate what they consider to be their own personal information? So like, oh, this is like not that personal to me, I don't mind, you can use it. And someone else thinks, that's actually very private, I care deeply about that, I don't want any system using it. Is there a fundamental barrier to why you couldn't do that using the thing that you were describing?
I would wonder, so from a background of designing things, it's sometimes the customers don't know the risks until the machine is available. You don't always know what you want until you have it, So if there's some things that, some users think this isn't personal, and then it comes out later that all this data has been inferred from things sent in emails, now all of a sudden that's an issue. So I kind of think we'd have to have some, agreement on what's privacy and what's not.
But I do agree with you that it's important that there's some level of the user deciding what's private and what's not. But yeah.
I just have a comment. I once co-hosted like a workshop on fiduciary AI assistants, basically, with I think it was Anthony Aguirre, who was at Metaculus and Future of Life Institute, and they were also looking into like how far can you go with like power of attorney and like like as fiduciary you have like specific responsibilities to the person whose fiduciary you are, and how one could enshrine that, like any legal complications around that. So if you want more info on that, like they definitely have done like a bit of a digging into this. Okay, thank you guys.